Hello and welcome along to Britball with the Breen. This week it's just myself. I have no guest. I've guests for the next 2 weeks set up, but unfortunately couldn't get anyone for tonight, and Sean couldn't make it. But that's all right. I did think about cancelling, but I thought let's just plough on and get through with this anyway, because there's been quite a few good games over the last week, and there's some good games to look forward to this week. So don't go anywhere. Feel free to chat to me in the comments, and we'll just kind of crack on with it. I guess just a kind of a quick look back to what was an absolutely excellent first week of Britball action. The Newcastle Vikings got their first Premier Division win and an upset away win over the Wolves. The Manchester Titans easily dispatched Tamworth Phoenix. Cambridgeshire Cats toppled the London Blitz. The Cheetahs got their first win, despite us, both Sean and I, picking against our guest on the show last week in his team. The Clyde Valley Blackhawks got a big upset against the Highland Stags. Humber beat Sheffield in our game of the week, which turned out to not exactly be game of the week. The Mavericks comfortably dispatched the Exiles. Then there was the South Wales Warriors, who performed on the road against the Bobcats. And the Sandwell Steelers getting their first win in, I believe, since 2019. I'm sure somebody can correct me on that. In a 25-23 game against the... thanks, Aaron. And a great game against the Lee Miners. And in the Battle of the Sexes, the Tridents came out on top against the Sussex Thunder. So... overall, a pretty exciting week, and you can always tell when it's an exciting week because Sean and I got an absolute boatload of these wrong, and thankfully to all of you out there that let us hear about it. I spent quite a lot of my week eating crow this week for some of my predictions, and that's what we want. I try and be as accurate as possible, but unfortunately it's not always the case, and that's kind of part of the fun when we get a bit of a roasting from you guys when we pick against your teams and you prove us wrong. Particularly a big shout out to Paul Ross and the Clyde Valley Blackhawks, who let me hear it this week. So I think I need that do-over, Aaron. Generally speaking, I do tend to get better as the year goes on, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, Paul Ross and the Clyde Valley Blackhawks, thank you so much for making sure to take the time out of your day to roast me this week. Well deserved. It was a great win against, probably the division favourites, or one of the division favourite Highland Stags. So it was an absolutely outstanding win for you guys, and that's what we'll love to see. This is before kind of going to this week's action. This is the point where I have to do the whole I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my views are of my own and not of my team. But the last night, the British American Football Association released the overview from the AGM, and that came out last night and contained some fairly troubling figures, it has to be said. The accounting numbers made for pretty shocking reading. I don't know if anyone's kind of went through them to have a look, but an operating loss from March 22 to March 23, which, to be quite frank, I can't understand how accounts can be a full year behind, but that's not my decision. You're talking about the league making an operating loss of, over 300 grand and spending £1 million in a year. And given that it means more self-refereed games and higher fees, it's a deeply disturbing trend. And I dread to think what the figures look like for next year. So let's hope it's improved. But yeah, that was kind of the news that came out of last night. And it was, quite a a disturbing read, unfortunately, surrounding our game. But it's just one of those things, unfortunately. But hey, we got that out. We've seen it. There's still a lot of grey area in it, but hopefully those that know better can kind of identify something that makes it, I guess, a little bit less concerning in some areas. But for now, that's kind of what we have to deal with. But yeah, so that came out last night. Although Sean isn't here with me, I do have his picks for the week, so we can still go through them as well. And then I'll take you through mine, and if you want to jump on and tell me how wrong I am, then that's great, and we'll kind of take it from there. So I'll just share my screen. Now let's see if I can do this again. Without too much trouble. Right. So if I switch this on and go to here. Okay, so nothing has changed in this category this week. The Crew Railroaders, the Aberdeen Roughnecks, and the South East Squadron are still the only fallen teams so far. Sean and I did have a debate this week over whether there should be a new submission into the Scumbag section this week, with the cancellation of the Staffordshire Surge versus the Lancashire Wolverines this week. The reason stated, however, was in fact that the pitch was unplayable. The pitch was unplayable due to being waterlogged. However, slightly concerning about that was that was released on Friday morning. So whoever made that decision, either something serious happened overnight, or they're not familiar with weather in the UK where that could change in the space of half an hour. So yeah, we debated it. I elected not to put them in there because I don't know what the weather is like down in Staffordshire. I'm sure someone can enlighten me or with what that situation is. But yeah, seeing a game getting called for poor pitch condition on a Friday morning seemed a little dubious at best. Good to see you, Russell. Yep, I am trying to go solo. As I say, I've got guest booked for the next couple of weeks, but unfortunately, this week I have neither Sean nor a guest this week, so it's just me. All right, Tom, how's it going? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with regards to Aaron, what you've said. The only excuse would be if they couldn't mark out the pitch and they use someone to use it, and that's why I decided not to put them into the Scumbag section this week, because there may have been a reason along those lines why it was called so early, why they made that decision. Again, it could have been like a council or a university field where they just kind of put their foot down way too early and say, no, we're not doing this. You're not getting to do that. And that's kind of it. It's taken out of their hands. So I decided not to throw them in that category this week, but we will be keeping an eye because, feels a bit early to be calling a game due to a waterlogged pitch. But hey, what can you do? So our game of the week last week was the Mavericks against the Exiles. I think it was a tight game for a little bit, but after that, I think the Mavericks kind of comfortably pulled away in the end. So yeah, not our best effort. We normally do try and pick the game that is the closest, and that would have been Sandwell Steelers against the Lee Miners. But yeah, on this week we missed it, but I think the vast majority of people backed the Mavericks to win, and that appeared to be the case. Thanks to the Nottingham Caesars, I did get a submission for a play of the week. The only downside is that my laptop is absolutely disgraceful, and if I tried to display a video through the stream, it would probably start smoking and screaming at me. So I'm not going to attempt it. It was a great one-handed interception. admittedly on a ball thrown by the quarterback that was in absolute no man's land. I have no idea what entirely the quarterback was throwing at, because there was 3 Nottingham Caesars defenders around it and no Birmingham Bulls. So yeah, it was a bit of a troubling throw, but it was a great one-handed catch by the Caesars defender. Going on to the game of the week. Now, this one looks like it could well be it could be a big game this week in the Premier Division. Edinburgh Wolves were last year's second place team in the Premiership North and went to the playoffs, where they were beaten by the Warriors. And the Newcastle Vikings, the new boys on the block in the Premier Division, pulled off the road game upset in a 23-14 win against Edinburgh Wolves. And the East Kilbride Pirates, facing who are likely to be the punching bags of the Premier North this year, the Merseyside Nighthawks, 43-7 on the road. So while it's difficult to kind of gauge at this stage, this early doors, what we're expecting from these two teams, this could be a big matchup in what was potentially the second place for the second place spot in the Premiership North and a playoff berth, given that Tamworth were fairly easily dispatched by the Titans this week. So yeah, this could be this. Well, yeah, Merseyside is a great way to phrase it, Aaron. I like that one. That's a good one. I'll give you that. This is a big matchup. It's in Newcastle. The head coach from the Vikings last season is now a defensive coach at the Pirates this year. Pirates have recruited heavily, but by all reports, so have the Vikings. And as we say, this could be looking at a matchup for two teams that are, potentially vying for second place in the Premiership North. So certainly be interesting to see what these two teams can do, and we'll hope it's a good game. It should hopefully be a much closer game than the one we picked last week, so we can just we can hold on to that hope. Now, Sean, for this week, he has sided with the East Kilbride Pirates. He's went with the road team on this game. I think I'm going to agree with him. I think I'm going to go with the Pirates, but I think this one's going to be mighty close. By all reports, the quarterback, wide receiver, number one receiver link up from the Vikings is something special this year. So it may come down to how well the Pirates actually are able to stop that. But on the flip side, it might also be about, can the Vikings, can the Pirates move the ball with the ease that they did against the Nighthawks. So difficult one, but I'm going to give my back into the road team this week, and I am aware that if the Vikings win, that is now 2 games in a row I've got wrong for them, and I fully expect to start hearing about it fairly soon. Should be a good game, and we'll kind of see what the score comes out of that. But as we say, it could be vitally important come the end of the season. Given that battle for that playoff spot. Okay, right. Shall we crack on then? As I say, it won't be a particularly long one tonight because it is just me. I do have Sean's picks, but I don't have anyone to debate with about how wrong they are. I don't want to then be wrong myself. The first game we'll have up is the Merseyside Nighthawks against the Edinburgh Wolves. Merseyside are at home again this week against an Edinburgh Wolves team that will be, if you'll excuse the pun, probably licking their wounds a little this week. Having been the team that finished second last year, got to the playoffs, they would obviously, your aim is to equal or better what you did last year. So to open the season with a home loss against the newly promoted Newcastle Vikings is definitely not how you want to start your season. I believe it was tied at half-time. But if there was one team you could pick on the calendar to kind of get yourself bouncing back, you're probably going to want it to be the Merseyside Nighthawks, even on the road. So I would expect the Wolves to get the job done. especially looking at the scoreline that the Pirates put up there. Who are we on to next? The Premiership South. I've lost control. It is not going willingly. We have the Cambridgeshire Cats against the Bristol Aztecs. Now, we weren't sure what kind of London Blitz team we'd see this week. This past week, apologies, and given all the rumours that had come out of it, but it seemed like a golden opportunity for the Cats to seize on that, and it looks like they did. And what was actually a real back and forth clash, a lot of points, not a whole lot of defense, but then if you believe what's being said, it was a lot of defensive players from the Blitz that kind of disappeared this year. Sorry, I should have also said Sean is also back to Edinburgh Wolves, by the way. But Bristol Aztecs finished second in this division and last year, and I see no reason to believe why they won't be second, potentially challenging for first again this year. The Cats got a great win last week. They've got that knock the rust off game out of the way in an absolute classic against the Blitz. So they'll be already kind of getting close to firing on all cylinders, whereas the Aztecs maybe, still have a bit of that first game of the season rust on them. But I still expect the Aztecs to get it done. They've got a great pool of resources down there in the Bristol area to pull from. And yeah, I fully expect that we'll be seeing an Aztecs win tomorrow. Sean has also agreed with me on this. He thinks the Aztecs may well be the team to beat in the Premiership South. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm expecting the Aztecs to kind of get the job done there this week. But with the way that the Cats were scoring on Sunday, I can see points coming in this game. So here's hoping we get some good points. Just make sure none of you are trying to shout at me. Yeah. Aaron, you speak about the Wolves, and I don't see any reason why they would struggle there, to be honest. I think, realistically, that's the game they want, right, to bounce back, as you say. The Highland Stags and Inverclyde Goliaths, and massive shout out to the Clyde Valley Blackhawks last week for making me eat a whole wedge of humble pie. I said I see no reason why the Stags wouldn't be able to beat the Blackhawks on the road, and the Blackhawks gave me 17 reasons why not. And they pulled out a great win to start the season. So Highland are another team, that'll be a disappointing loss for them to start the season. And I'd fully expect them to be prepared to bounce back this week. They're now at home this week. And, I think we're going to see a different animal this week from Highland. But especially being at home, that home ground is such a good setup. And, everyone likes their home cooked dinners the night before and that. Sean, however, has went with the Goliaths on this one. We've disagreed on this one. Sean seems to be back in the road team, and he's expecting he's looking into that Clyde Valley result last week and feels that some worrying signs from that result, and he's backing the Inverclyde Goliaths to win this week. But as I say, much like the Wolves game, I'm fully expecting the team that were probably favourites going into the season to kind of ping back from that and perform well. Mordor will be defended in a close game. Yeah, I think the Blackgate's going to be a little hard to bash down this week for the Goliaths, but you never know. I think the Stags will be pushing for an improved performance this week, especially given that they were shut out for a large proportion of the game against the Blackhawks. I'd fully expect them to be firing on all cylinders this week. Then we have the NFC 1 North. And in the NFC 1 North, We have got the Chester Romans against the Humber Warhawks. Again, we're talking about Chester Romans, a playoff team last year. They won on the road against Highland in the first round, and I believe lost to Nottingham or Newcastle in the second round. It was one of the two of them they lost to in the second round, so they're already looking to be, potentially one of the favourites to try and go to the playoffs and look to get promotion this year. And Humber have continued to get better every year, and I am absolutely here for it, especially considering their uniforms have also got better in line with their play, because those green and red combos that they had in their first years were absolutely bouffing. They look a bit better these days. Humber obviously have got their first game out of the way, and it was a good 14-0 win against the Sheffield Giants. So yeah, it gives a literal meaning to a giant killer there. But I believe the Romans should be a step too far. I think the Romans are a solid outfit. They've been pretty consistent for a while now, and so far I see nothing to suggest that there'll be a drop off this year. But yeah, stranger things have happened. But I'm giving my back into the Romans this week. And Sean agrees with me. He was really impressed by the Humber Warhawks win against Sheffield, but he still thinks Chester is a step too far for the Warhawks. Surprised nobody's pointed out spelling. Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I did think it was the Vikings, the Newcastle, but I couldn't actually remember off the top of my head. But I knew it was one of the two. But yeah, they had a good close win up at Highland and then lost to the Vikings. Yeah, Tom, I'm kind of with you on that one. I obviously haven't met the guys from Chester in a while now, but I know some of the guys involved, and they're a really strong program. I'm big on the Warhawks. I like them. But yeah, I would anticipate that the Romans are just going to be that bridge too far this week. Now, as you know, it might be a bit tighter given the fact that Chester haven't had that again. For all of you that have been involved in Britball for a number of years, you know yourself that first game of the season is normally a bit of a slugfest. It's not normally the prettiest games. You get mistakes, you get turnovers, you get offenses not really clicking because defense is easier to play than offense. Come at me. And yeah, so I think the game will maybe be a little bit tighter than we expect, I guess. But I still think the Romans will be the dominant team in that game. Okay, then we have the Scunthorpe Alphas and the Sheffield Giants. Yeah, I mean, Scunthorpe had a bit of a rapid rise, and Sheffield seemed to be heading in the opposite direction. I think, as much as I want to give the praise to Humber about a great performance and winning 14-0 against Sheffield Giants last week, for me, it also points to perhaps a more worrying trend within the Giants camp, as much as it pointed to a strong point in the Warhawks camp. And I see, looking at this game, I fully anticipate that struggle may well continue this week. I think Scunthorpe will win this game. It's in Scunthorpe. Giants have already suffered a significant defeat by way of the teams that they've got to play. Yeah, and I think depending on what the scoreline is with this Scunthorpe game, it might be slightly worrying times for Sheffield. You hope not, but yeah, I expect the Alphas to kind of get the job done and get the win in the bag. Just check, see if anyone said anything to me. Yeah, last time someone came at me from Highland, I ended up with less knees than I started with. Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. Now my right knee doesn't work at all. But yeah, I mean, who needs them anyway? Yeah, Dale, I completely agree with you on that. It's really worrying to see kind of how quickly the Sheffield Giants have fallen. It feels an awful lot like they've taken a tumble pretty quickly. And I don't see where the brakes are being applied. I raised eyebrows amongst my colleagues last week when I said I thought they did okay last year, and I was very, very wrong. Yeah, I mean, hopefully not, but if they are going to sort of turn this around, I'm not expecting it to be this week. So yeah, hopefully it's a close enough game, and we don't start seeing that sort of reeling of the Giants as kind of the season goes on, the kind of unraveling of it. The NFC 1 Midlands, we have the Birmingham Bulls and the Shropshire Revolution. Now, the Birmingham Bulls game against the Nottingham Caesars was streamed last week, and Birmingham gave a very good account of themselves, as I say, as much as I got that the play sent in and the one-handed interception by the Caesars. It was a deeply troubling pass thrown by the Birmingham Bulls quarterback, but it was 20-8 to the Caesars, a team which are probably, one of the favourites for Division 1 on a whole this year. Not sort of a worrying loss by any stretch of the imagination. Shropshire, on the other hand, had a 14-0 loss to Northampton Knights, which again is not a worrying defeat at all. The Knights are quite good, and as I say, they seem to believe that they're going to be winning the division this year, if you believe our Instagram comments. But I think out of these two teams, I have far more confidence in the Birmingham Bulls than I do the Shropshire Revolution to get a result this week. So I'm going to back the Birmingham Bulls, and on this one, I'm just trying to find Sean's pick on this one. I cannot see it. Sean has not picked a team on this one unless he picked it on the screen down. No, I don't think he's picked a team on it, but if I were Sean, I reckon he's going to pick the Birmingham Bulls on this one. So yeah, we're going to go with the Bulls. Bit weird of him not to pick a score. He's obviously just missed that one on his screen grabs that he sent me. We're super high tech here. You see, he basically just screenshotted the games list and put a little green mark next to the team that he was expecting to win. So yeah, he's went with them on this occasion. With regards to what you're saying, Russell, can I see them going the same way as Sandwell? Honestly, yes. And I guess in some ways it's maybe been a bit of a slower free fall, but yeah, you kind of feel like they're trending that way at the moment. And just like with Sandwell, you hope not. I hope not for the Sheffield Giants, but looking at the way they're playing and the lack of points that their offense is putting up as well, it's not exactly good signs for them. So I'm not really convinced that we're going to see much improvement from them on this front. Then we head into I seen you pick a 0-0 for Sean on that one, Aaron. So we'll mark that up as Sean's pick. We'll say it was a 0-0. The SFC 1 East, the East Kent Mavericks against the London Blitz B. Now, there was reports of massive fall-off at the Norwich Devils, but to be quite frank, I honestly didn't expect the fall-off to be that bad, given that there was also reports of issues within the London Blitz, the whole London Blitz organisation. But the Blitz B ran out as comfortable 45-0 road winners in our game of the week, the Mavericks and the Exiles. It was 27-6 to the Mavericks. This could be a cracking game. This one was considered as game of the week, but we don't like picking the same teams 2 weeks in a row if we can avoid it. So we went with the other one, given that, we didn't want to pick the Mavericks a second week running. Both offenses obviously look decent. Both defenses, the two teams' defenses gave up 6 points between them. So, I'm going to go ahead and assume that the Exiles got a touchdown with no extra point, but I cannot be sure. Sean, on this occasion, if you bear with me, has went for... Where are you? Where is this one? Sean has went with the London Blitz B for this one, and I am going to respectfully disagree with him, and I'm going to back the home team, the East Kent Mavericks. I don't know why. I just feel like I do know why. I feel like the opponents that the Mavs played were probably better than the opponents that the Blitz played. So I'm going to go with the Mavericks on this occasion, and I am fully prepared to be wrong once more. Yeah, it's American football we're talking. Yeah, as I say, Anthony, it is early days. I'm assuming it's the Giants. They will improve. But yeah, we can hope for that anyway. Yeah, and Aaron, you're right, and that's why it was considered for Game of the Week. Generally, as we've said before, Sean and I aim to pick our Game of the Week based on which game we think is going to be the closest. But we do also kind of have a discussion about trying not to just pick the same teams, because you could argue it'll be a Prem Division game every single week, or there was a run of weeks where the division that had Hertfordshire and the London Hornets and the Wembley Stallions in it was basically the game of the week every single week, because that was those games you never actually knew which teams were going to win. So yeah, we do try and avoid it, but yeah, it has certainly had a good case for the game of the week. And as you're right, potential first place for division in this in this division. For the person asking, this is the UK American Football League, so it covers. It doesn't just cover England; it's the whole of the UK. No, this is just amateur sport. This is just people that like to play the game in the UK at various different levels, from Division 2 to Premier Division. So they are a considerable variation of abilities and levels across the UK game, and so nobody gets paid. The Norwich Devils and the London Olympians. Now, as much, again, this is another one where, I want to give the credit where it's due to the London Blitz B, but with the reports of a lot of the, obviously the playoff game last year, there was reports that some Devils players moved on or left or didn't play. They then got kind of well beaten in the playoffs in a game that were maybe expected to win. And then they've come into this season and lost 45-0 at home on the opening game of the season against a London Blitz B team. Now, I know everyone keeps telling me that the London Blitz and the London Blitz B are separate entities, but you're not going to tell me that if the London Blitz A lose players, that they're not going to first protocol is going to be to the London Blitz B to pick up some players. So yeah, as much as I don't want to take anything away from the Blitz B, I think it was a very, very worrying scoreline for the Norwich Devils. London Olympians, we're talking about a team that again have went through this cycle of a fairly serious drop, but they've really been building back strong over the last couple of years. And I picked them for the division this year, and I still stand by that, even though I haven't seen them play this year yet. Oh, my antivirus has expired. Thanks for that. But yeah, I expect the London Olympians to get a fairly comfortable win in this game. And I think we may well see sort of a worrying sign for the Norwich Devils this season. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. You hope for the Devils' sake that this is a better game than they had last week, but I'm not. I'm not convinced in the slightest that it will be. I'm 100% on the Olympian strain this week, and if I just have a quick look, yep, Sean is 100% in agreement with me on this one after seeing the Norwich Devils last week. He thinks it'll be the Olympians. I can't remember. Someone might remind me. Did Sean not pick the Devils to win that division last week? He may well have. So yeah, so I'm not anticipating that he's going to be back on the Devils train anytime soon. Then we move on to the SFC1 Central, the Rushmore Knights against the Wembley Stallions. Now this will be an interesting one because Wembley are such a peculiar team. They win some good games, but someone might tell me I'm not fully correct here, but is it not the last couple of seasons they've kind of fallen off a little bit towards the end? Rushmore opened the season with a fairly convincing 33-14 win against the Dreadnoughts. They're at home again this week. They seem to have righted the ship fairly quickly at Rushmore, and they do have a good core group of players there. I'm going to back the Stallions. I still have faith in the Stallions, especially early on in the season. But I think this is going to be a tight one as well. This well could have been a game of the week, possibly. But I'm going to go with the Wembley Stallions, and Sean actually agrees with me on that one as well. It's one of the only times we seem to agree quite a lot. Yeah, Daniel, it's kind of what I was hearing as well, a massive exodus of retirements and, their US players going elsewhere. Yeah, and I that is what kind of we'd been hearing as well. So yeah, it does look like slightly troubling times, and in some ways this is kind of the problem, and that is that teams go through these cycles, but when you lose so many players at once, it can be quite hard. And then you go through a season like this where you maybe get, beaten quite severely every week, and then it can be really hard to bounce back from that. Yeah, Aaron, as you're saying, against Rushmore, if you could air it out, you had a good chance against them. And if you're run heavy, they were hard to beat. I think the problem with Rushmore last year as well is, by all accounts, they beat themselves a heck of a lot by just, and you never want to kind of speak ill on fellow coaches, but by all accounts, a lot of the problems were self-made by fairly questionable coaching decisions. Things like being in a 4th and 35 situation on your own 10 and not punting. It just, things like that. It seems an awful lot like the Knights just didn't help themselves. I still think they're a decent football team, and I'm not expecting the game against Wembley to be a blowout by any means, especially since, from what I've seen, Wembley are more heavy on the ground. What's that, Tom, about the illegal uniforms? Wembley might get penalised for illegal uniforms. What's that all about? Is that to do with the... is that to do... is that to do with like the multicolored? Do they not have like the multicolored numbers on the back of their jersey? Yeah, so it's one of those. But I think the Stallions will win it, but it's going to be close. Yeah, is that an issue, Aaron? Is that one of those things? Is it like you're not supposed to have the multicolored jerseys on numbers on the back of your jersey? Right. Okay. Well, hopefully they found a solution by then. Just get a couple of bits of paper and just stick on, make the rest of the numbers white. So we'll carry on. We'll go on to the SFC1 West, and we have Hereford Stampede against the Bristol Apache. Now, I haven't seen Hereford this season yet. We have, however, seen the Apache play, and they ran out pretty comfortable 35-0 road winners against Somerset. And I see absolutely no reason why Hereford would do a better job against the Apache than the Wyverns did, and I feel like this may be a very long day indeed for the Hereford Stampede. Bristol are very solid setup from top to bottom, and they're a very efficient football team, and I see no reason to kind of go away from that prediction for this week. Again, Sean agrees with me on this one. Sean also backed the Wembley Stallions, in case I didn't say that. So I'm going to back the Apache on this one. The Somerset Wyverns and the South Wales Warriors. Now, kind of two different results last week from these two teams. I did expect the Apache to beat the Wyverns, but I thought it would be a closer game than maybe a few expected, and I was wrong. And the South Wales Warriors, who historically were very poor on the road, got a good win against a strong Bournemouth team. So yeah, two very different results than kind of I guess we were expecting. And I think I expect to see the South Wales Warriors go to 2-0 this week. Maybe this is kind of a new look South Wales attack, but they're going to Somerset this week, and I expect the Warriors to get the win on this one. Just have a quick check back, make sure no one's that's a good point about the Warriors winning on the road to Bournemouth last year too, which is a weird one because they really struggled to put up points, but on the road, if I recall rightly. But 19 points against Bournemouth, a pretty comfortable win. It was a good win for them, and I don't see any reason to go against them this week. Tom, you're saying there was Scott, I've just seen yours as well. The rules this year are brutal. Have penalised loss of first time out each half and 15-yard penalty. Yeah, I mean, I get the issues with the numbers, but it also feels like we've got far bigger problems in the British American Football League than, stamping on teams that have, multicolored numbers on their jerseys. It's I don't know, but those are the rules at the end of the day. So we crack on with that. That's what it is. Sean has also backed the South Wales Warriors on this one. We then have the NFC2 East, the Darlington Steam and the Lincolnshire Bombers. If last year is anything to go by, I don't think there's too much to get excited about in this game. We haven't seen either team play yet. But I certainly think there was off the field or behind the field scenes with the Darlington team. And it kind of escalated onto the field a little bit. As for the Lincolnshire Bombers, they made some decent progress a few years back, and then that kind of fell away post-COVID. I don't know. I'm going to back the Bombers on this one. I feel like if with regards to those off-field things with this team, it tends to carry on into the next year if there's not too many changes made. So I'm going to go with the Bombers in a close one on this one. And then there's the old Doncaster Mustangs against the Gateshead Senators. Sean picked the Bombers over the Steam for the last one. For the Mustangs and the Senators, again, I think these two were back and forth quite a bit last season. I can't remember who won the games, but I think they were quite high scoring, quite back and forth affairs. I've picked the Senators to win that division, so it would be fairly silly of me to then go into this game and pick the Mustangs. So I'm going to back the Senators. And Sean agrees with me, but I think this could be a really interesting game and maybe quite telling on how this NFC2 East is actually going to shape up going into the rest of the season potentially. Yeah, I did think that Gateshead were 2-0, but were the games not very high scoring? I'm fairly sure I remember at least one of the games was I'm sure it was like something silly like back and forth between these two teams last year, perhaps at Doncaster. Just trying to think. Yeah, I think so. I can't even remember. I'm gonna have to look it up because it's gonna annoy me. I'm sure one of the games was like an absolutely insane scoreline. I'm gonna have a quick look but yeah, I did think the Senators took both games, but I wasn't 100% on it. 2023. Let's have a quick look. Doncaster Mustangs. Yeah, so it was 52-40 to the Senators in one of the games. Did they only play one? No, they didn't. And then 42-21 to the Senators in the second game. So in Doncaster, the Gateshead Senators won 52-40 last year. So yeah, I still expect the Senators to win, but again, maybe we get treated to another high-scoring affair like we did last time out. So in Doncaster, so something like that would be good again. But yeah, back in the Senators to win on this occasion as well. We're getting close. We're now on to the NFC2 West, and that is where the Staffordshire Surge and Lancashire Wolverines, sorry, it's the Lancashire Wolverines, not Lancashire Wolverines, don't give me abuse for it, has been postponed or was postponed like 3.5 weeks ago or whatever it was now on Friday due to an unplayable pitch, which is a bit of a weird one, but that'll be carried on. That'll be rearranged for another day. The SFC2 East, we have the Essex Tridents and the Colchester Gladiators. The Essex Tridents with a 9-7 win against Sussex Thunder last week. Kind of looked an awful lot like the Sabres of last year, where not many points were scored, but their defense was rock solid. It seems to have been a repeat of that this year. Colchester were struggling against Swindon for a bit, but they kind of rallied into the second half and got the win there. But I expect to see the Tridents keep taking steps forward. So I am going to back the Tridents on this one, and Sean actually agrees with me on this. I think that defense is going to be pretty good for the Tridents all year. House Valley against the Ipswich Cardinals. Now, I will confess, I have absolutely no idea where either of these teams is going to be this year. I think they were both. I think that I'm pretty sure that the Eagles kind of struggled a bit last year, actually, and the Cardinals were a bit better, but still not really in contention for anything. So it's kind of difficult to say where these two teams are going to be. I am going to back the Cardinals, even though they're on the road. And so is Sean on this occasion. He is also going to back the Ipswich Cardinals. And down to our last game of the week, the Swindon Storm against the Cornwall Monarchs. Now, Sean and I disagree on this one. However, he believes that the Swindon Storm are going to win. I still think that Swindon are that team that will get beat by teams that they should lose to, and they'll beat teams they probably really should beat. But they're still that sort of perfect middle of the road, the Andy Dalton line. That's not to say that I necessarily believe that Cornwall are one of the better teams, but I am I still expect to see the Monarchs win this one, even though it's on the road. Someone who's more familiar with that area can tell me how far Swindon actually is from Cornwall. I think it's maybe a fairly decent length of a trek, but yeah, I still think Cornwall kind of get the win on this occasion. And that is through all of the games for this week. It's a nice and quick one because it's obviously just myself. Next week, however, I have not one but two guests booked in for next week, as well as hopefully having Sean back. So next week we should be able to kind of get more into detail with things. But for this week, it's just been me. And yeah, I think we kind of got through that pretty well. Thanks for kind of jumping in at times and getting involved. Yeah, I know it's the Monarchs' first game and it's Swindon's second game, and you kind of get that. So, you know, yeah, and you're right, Tom. You know, your faith being with the middle of nowhere Cornish friends. They're going to be fueled by Cornish pasties and get the job done in Swindon. But Swindon, I believe Swindon's on the west coast, like the southwest, isn't it? Although the way you classify where west and all that is very different to what I would, I guess. Yeah, but you know, there's some good games this week, some cracking games, plenty to look forward to. Yeah, so here's hoping that we'll get some decent matchups tomorrow. Hopefully, our game of the week is a lot closer than our was last week. And yeah, as I say, for all the guys, all the folks playing games tomorrow, play safe. Let's see some good score lines. And don't forget to send in things like your plays of the week. And just anything you want to share with us, any highlights or anything. We've got our Instagram page and that to kind of share those things as well. So don't hesitate to send us stuff. We'll love to watch it. We're sad individuals like that you know, if teams send us highlight reels, we'll definitely sit down and check them out because they're always good fun to watch. So please feel free to send them in to us. But yeah, outside of that, thanks very much for tuning in. Best of luck for all those playing tomorrow, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers.